Hello.
Alice, ¡Ay! ¡Qué ilusión! ¡Qué ilusión!
He's very excited to see you.
I'm
Sí,
very excited to see you too.
Está súper emocionado por verte también.
muchísimas gracias por tu tiempo, Alice.
Thank you so much for your time.
Muchísimas
It's a
gracias.
pleasure.
Es un
Pleasure.
placer.
No, haremos una sobremesa con vino, prometido.
He says he'd really like to sit down with you for a glass of wine afterwards. It's a promise.
Absolutely.
Por supuesto.
Alice, solamente un detalle, una cosa. Hay mucha gente muy feliz, muchos miles de personas feliz de que estés con nosotros compartiendo este momento.
He just wants to say one thing, which is that there are thousands and thousands of people that are so happy that you're here sharing your time at this moment.
Yo no quería perder la oportunidad de felicitarte por ese 50 cumpleaños de Chiflanis.
He didn't want to miss the opportunity to congratulate you on the 50 years anniversary of Chez Panisse.
Y
Well, I hope
decirte,
you'll come to our celebration.
I would love to. Quiere que vayas a la celebración
ay,
también.
ojalá. Y decirte,
Keep in touch.
He hopes so.
Alice, que tienes aquí tu casa.
You're,
Tienes muchos amigos y mucha gente que te admira.
you have a home here whenever you want to come here. There's a lot of people that admire you, a lot of friends for you here as well.
I've always wanted to come to that region, and I will come the next time I can come travel
Siempre
to
ha
Europe.
querido venir a esta región y la próxima vez que pueda va a venir.
Thank you. Te dejo con Bella, te dejo con gente más interesante que yo.
¿Qué va? ¿Qué va?
Te traduce.
It's not true. Oh, sorry. He's saying he's leaving you with more important, more interesting people than him. I'm saying it's not true. Also important.
Not true.
It's not true. Absolutely not. Well, hello. Good evening. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, Alice, and welcome everyone to this edition of Diálogos de Cocina, talking about shaking things up in the food system with Alice Waters. My name's Bella. I'm co-owner of a little restaurant in San Sebastian called Gerald's Bar. And I have to say, it's a real privilege for me to be here today. Antonio was stealing my telephone. Can you believe it? Alice Waters, you've been on my periphery for quite some time now, although I really started taking an interest in you when my head chef in the bar, Jess, introduced me to what you're doing. Since then, I have to say you've become something of an aspirational figure for me. Alice Waters is Vice President of the Slow Food Movement. She's the founder of the Chez Panisse Foundation, which is where the Edible Schools Project was born. She's a chef, she's an author, she's a revolutionary food activist, the creator of the farm to table movement, and a champion of taste and nourishment. As if that weren't enough, as Antonio mentioned already, she's the founder and executive chef of Chez Panisse Restaurant, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Unbelievable achievement. It's such a pleasure to be here sharing a screen with you today, I have to say.
Thank
Over
you.
to you, Alice.
How shall I begin?
Oh, I'm so sorry. If you could give us an introduction about your projects that you're working on at the moment. I have some questions for you that I'll pose to you in a little while. But if you could just talk to us about the fast food movement and the slow food movement, and that would be wonderful.
Well, I've just completed a manifesto, and it's called We Are What We Eat. And it's coming out on the 1st of June this year. And I call it a slow food manifesto because I have wanted to understand how we could have, in these last 50 years, completely lost our human values, how we could cook in the way that we do. We've lost the desire to cook in the United States. And I think about how that could have happened and how could we have completely changed to industrial agriculture and feel so disconnected to nature. And the more I thought about it, the more I began to understand that if you eat fast food and you eat in that way, you begin to digest the values that come with the food. So you begin to want more because more is better. Time is money. You think everything should be available to you 24/7. And there's always more where that came from. So you never have to worry. And that cooking is drudgery and farming is drudgery. The idea that it's not important to sit at the table, that it's okay to eat in your car, that it really doesn't matter where the food comes from, as long as it keeps coming. And I feel that that is what has happened to us. And we have spread this fast food culture around the world and destroyed the health of the planet and the health of ourselves. So I think changing the way you eat could change the world. So my very big idea is really about changing the food in schools, because they're such a big buyer. And what if they bought food directly from the farmers and the ranchers and the fishers? What if they bought it directly from them? No middleman. So all the money could go to them, to the people who take care of the land and take care of the farm workers. This is what we did at Chez Panisse almost 50 years ago. We got connected with one farm particularly, but we have a network of maybe 80 people that we buy from during the course of the year. But they know we are always there for them. So it's a little bit like community supported agriculture, in the sense that you depend on those farmers for the taste at the restaurant. And I do depend on them, and I want them to be really happy to receive the compost that we send to them, because we are so happy to come back with their fruits and vegetables. Now, we are eating rigidly seasonally, which is extremely important, even if you live in a cold climate or a warm climate. Maybe there's a few little treats that you might get at some time of the year from some other place. But I think that before about 60 years ago, we all ate that way. It was before frozen foods. We ate from the regional area that we lived in. And we really have to do that again. So I'm seeing a silver lining to this pandemic, because it has awakened us around the industrialization of food, about food scarcity, about hunger, and really about nature. I mean, we're all interdependent, and we're awakening. We have been awakened to that idea like never before, that what happens over there can affect what's happening here. And of course, climate is really first and foremost. And to imagine, this is the silver lining, that if we chose to farm regeneratively and organically, it could pull the carbon right down into the ground where it belongs. And at the very same time, it's the most nourishing food for us. It can repair our immune system. Can you imagine? And then on top of that, it's seasonally ripe when you eat locally. And so that's where taste comes from. At the beginning, I wasn't looking for organic farmers, really. I mean, I lived in Berkeley and I knew about organic food, and I read Silent Spring, and I knew about Diet for a Small Planet. And my sister was an organic farmer, but that food was not the food that I had eaten in France. It seemed overgrown. It seemed to not have the taste. So I was looking for taste, and that's how I ended up at the doorsteps of all these incredible people who were growing peaches and who were raising chickens, free-ranging chickens. And it opened my eyes completely, and we became friends. And that was the beautiful, beautiful part of it all. I don't know. Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead. You're welcome.
I could listen to you for hours. We're bringing in a few other people into the conversation as well, who I think are going to join us now. We'll just see if they, here we go. Here they come.
Hello.
Lovely. So I'll just introduce you to the people that we have here. We have Juana Castellanos, who's a young chef working in the team at Mugaritz. Carlos Casillas, who's a student here at the Basque Culinary Center. And then Julia Espeso, who's a graduate in gastronomic sciences masters at BCC, who's joining from Harvard University in Boston as well.
Okay.
It's lovely to have you all here. I just wanted to start off with a question, mainly based around the fact that you've had a restaurant for 50 years now. It's incredible. I think the world is probably, it's fair to say, quite a different place now to what it was 50 years ago. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on sort of the opportunities that are presented to young people nowadays in terms of opening restaurants or working in restaurants that perhaps you didn't have 50 years ago. And in the same vein, sort of difficulties that young people face nowadays that perhaps weren't difficulties when you started Chez Panisse 50 years ago.
Well, I have to say that I never went into the restaurant business to make money. I never thought about money. I really didn't. I wanted to do what I had a passion for. And I figured that if the food was tasty enough, that people would come. And if it wasn't, I better do something about it. And that was always my thinking, because I have a very strong desire to live a life that I want to live. I want to have beauty. I want to have delicious food. I want to be with friends. I don't want to have work that is disconnected from culture. And I was very lucky because Chez Panisse was right next to the University of California. And so we had that great opportunity to have young people come and want to work in the restaurant for the 4 years that they went to school. So they pushed us to be teachers for them. And that there was this kind of life that was always changing. And then the second part of that is that the faculty came to eat at the restaurant. And they brought people that were very important around the world. We got to entertain the Dalai Lama.
Amazing.
It was amazing. But
Amazing.
you know, people like Mark Morris, the dancer, he just pretended like Chez Panisse was his own personal house when he came to perform at the university. But that is a very important part for me of running a restaurant. I want that diversity.
Yeah.
I want not only within the staff, but I want it within the customer base. And it's the reason that we opened up the cafe upstairs,
Mm-hmm.
because we wanted people to have more affordable food. Because downstairs was this very strict, menu du jour. You had
Yeah.
to like what we gave you.
And was
Now, I
that-
will never let go of that.
Of course. Was that something that developed naturally? I mean, was it, did you find that people were asking for menus outside of the menu du jour that you were offering in the restaurant?
Well, it wasn't so much that they were asking for it as it sort of limited the number of friends that that I wanted to have come to the restaurant all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, they were celebrating their birthdays and all of that, and I was able to really feed people things that they had never tasted before.
Yeah.
It's extremely important it was and still is extremely important for that reason.
Yeah.
But I wanted it to be a place where friends gathered,
Absolutely.
and they came after performances at Cal or theater or whatever it was, and we'd be open late, and we could serve lunch upstairs. And so that's how the cafe came into existence, really. And we wanted to buy and support more farmers
Yeah.
and
Of course.
ranchers. And so that gave us that opportunity.
I suppose going back to my original question, what I was trying to get at is that, do you think it would be possible to open a restaurant in the same philosophy with the same ideals as Chez Panisse 50 years ago nowadays? Do you think that's something that young people can aspire to? Because it's a wonderful, I've read some wonderful stories about the sort of opening days and the first couple of years of the restaurant. It sounds like a wonderful place to be.
Well, I do believe it's, in a way, I couldn't imagine opening it any other way. It was meant to be, a group of friends
Yeah.
that were working together and not having ever ambition to have more places. We just wanted that one place. And I
Yeah.
remember when I lived in France, those were the places I loved to go to. They were family run. And sometimes a kid was running around in the restaurant, or sometimes one of their children was behind the bar, but they were definitely run as a way of life.
Yeah.
They were small. I mean, I think they seated, like downstairs at Chez Panisse, about 40, 50 people at the most, had a bar, counter, and they were full all of the time.
Yeah.
Really,
I said,
all of the time. Yes.
and no, just talking about children sort of leads quite nicely onto the Edible Garden project. I know that Julia had some questions about that. I wonder whether she might want to ask those now.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, firstly, I want to say congratulations on the 50th year anniversary of Chez Panisse. Congratulations. So my question was around Montessori education, and I know you're a qualified Montessori teacher. But there might be people that are listening that may not know, but Montessori is a method of education that is based on a self-directed activity, hands-on learning, and just collaborative activities. And I was wondering, you as a teacher and an international qualified Montessori teacher, and just a general advocate for public education, what values do you think of the Montessori education are directly transferable to those of the counterculture of everything that you've been speaking about? Are they related in any way?
They relate almost perfectly. You know, Montessori did her work as a doctor at the turn of the last century in the slums of India and Naples. And she felt that these children were sensorially deprived, that they couldn't really see and hear and smell and taste and touch because of hunger and poverty, yes. But we now live in a fast food world culture that has left us sensorially deprived. And we are not, those are our pathways into our minds, our senses. So if they are not being, as Montessori said, educated, you're not, you know, using your hands to touch, you're not listening carefully, you're not observing things in great detail, you're not using your sense of smell, you almost are imprisoned. And so when I thought of using the ideas of Montessori for the Edible Schoolyard project at the beginning, it worked like a charm. Now, I had already used Montessori ideas to wake up the patrons at the restaurant through smell. I would burn rosemary in the restaurant. We had a fire going. I would bake bread just so that people would feel good when they came in. I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted there to be flowers that were seasonal. So you felt like it was fall. And there were big branches of colored leaves turning. And I wanted people to pick up the food and feel it. So we would have a bowl of cherries or a way that you had to use your hands. And then, you know, I wanted people to be able to have conversation. I didn't want loud music in the restaurant. And I wanted them to be able to see the kitchen. So we opened the whole kitchen, so that there were no hidden parts of the restaurant that weren't looking good. And so there was no back of the house, which is something I feel very strongly about, and that we should all consider this as restaurateurs.
I think it's so important
because
as well.
we don't want to have even people doing that simple work of shelling peas, doing it in some dark room. I want them to be looking at beautiful tiles or a picture on the wall, or I want the room to be saying to them, you are doing important work for the dinner tonight. And that is, and whether it's the dish room or whether it's the place where they store the laundry, I want it to look good. I want our suppliers to come in, not through the dirty basement. You know, I want them to feel welcome in the kitchen. I do. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I think it's something that I love about your philosophy actually, which is that every single part of the customer and staff experience is taken into account. It's not about one thing or the other. It's about the sum of all the parts together. Juana and Carlos as well, they're both studying, well, Juana is working as a chef and Carlos is a student. I'm sure they've got something to ask about that side of things, definitely.
Okay, so hi Alice, very nice to listen to you. Talking about the staff, I know you've been through a lot of years behind a kitchen as an owner and as a chef. So I imagine you probably have something to say with this. How could you describe, maybe to say, a philosophy when we speak about the high rotation of staff? How hard it is to leave people leave in a way? And how could you manage with this all these years?
Well, I have always hired my friends or hired people that potentially could be my friends, because I want to have a kind of thing in the kitchen where we really like each other and respect each other. And maybe I've made a few mistakes, but not many, really. And people have stayed an unbelievably long period of time. I mean, 35 years, one, and I mean, more than that, or they leave and they come back because they're always welcome back. And it's important, that conversation that I want to happen in the kitchen. So we're all tasting together. And yes, the chef has final say, but it's invaluable to hear everybody's opinion. And I mean everybody's. Even the dining room staff can come in and taste and give an opinion. And we always want the staff to eat the food that people in the dining room are eating. I think that's a unique something that I have to offer to everybody who works there, because I've been both in the dining room and in the kitchen and eating there on a regular basis. So I can see things differently. Yeah. There wasn't quite enough of that on the plate, maybe, or that was this or that. And that kind of critical analysis, we can make something that's greater than the sum of the parts. Yeah. That's to me a thrill when we all feed in and we come up with something that all of us are astonished that we made together. I call it a regenerative kitchen now. I'm thinking that we need to start a regenerative cooking school, because we don't want that pyramid with the chef on the top and all of these little people on the bottom. We want this other kind of collaboration going on. And believe me, everybody has a very special talent in the kitchen. And I treasure that. That person can grill that quail like no one else can. And it's so, I mean, it's just, it's like to watch a ballet when somebody gets into that.
Definitely.
That play.
I think, well, we talk about hospitality as a lifestyle that people choose to get into. And I think restaurants they can be difficult environments. This is more of a personal question, I suppose, but how is it possible, do you think, in an ideal future, to find a point where staff are well looked after, both in terms of their needs and in terms of, well, their financial needs with if they have families and things as well. Paying the farmers and our suppliers what they deserve to be paid for the correct quality of produce that we want to use, while still making a restaurant continue with the wheels in motion from a business sense. I know I certainly didn't get into this career expecting to make a lot of money, and but you know, you have staff to pay, you have rent to pay, and how do you see this working in the future?
Well, I think that having that connection, that direct connection with the farmers, the people that you buy your food from. You know, I lived in Paris in the 60s when it was a real slow food place. And every little neighborhood had a farmer's market. So everybody bought food in that way. It was all organic, basically, at that time, and only coming from that region. And very seasonal. They wouldn't even have food that came from the south of France, and maybe olive oil, but nothing else, no vegetables or anything. And I thought in a way that would be a kind of straitjacket in the restaurant business. But in fact, it is the place that you can feel most liberated. I mean, and especially during this pandemic right now. I mean, when one ingredient is gone, it is gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
And we don't have to keep, you know, pretending that it's there and struggling with that monotony of cooking and in this to-go food. I mean, we've thought of maybe 5 new dishes that we can make with cardoons. You know, and if you think about affordable food and nutritious food, I mean, nothing could be more so than greens and beans.
Yeah. So
and if you
would you say that's the recipe for a successful business model then, the product?
I do absolutely. And ripeness. I mean, everybody is knocked out when we have these little tiny quiche mandarins. Now, I send these quiche mandarins to people around the country who live in the snow, and every one of those people writes me back. This is the best thing I've ever had. This is, you know, and that's how, when we get a Blenheim apricot and we give it to the customer. But if we are not heavy on meat and cheese, we can really make it work.
Yeah, definitely.
And really make it work. I mean, it's about portion size. Of course, it's about portion size. And no, we can't do steaks like this. No. And make it work. And especially with a grass-fed one. But people can be very satisfied with a smaller piece. If there are other things on the plate that really complement. And
absolutely.
I've thought about that a lot, and I'm thinking about that because I'm into the school lunch place, and I'm making a whole book about how we can make culturally diverse school lunches that fit into the reimbursement, which is nothing, $1.50.
Carlos, you're currently studying at the Basque Culinary Center. I'm sure talking about education, you would have some questions for Alice, certainly.
I wanted to ask you, Alice, you have said that you didn't open Japanese to make money. Last week, I was thinking about how to talk to you and what to ask you. And I had wondered about many questions to ask you. but I prefer to launch a reflection here that I hope you can complete with your impressions. Okay, 2 years ago in Diálogos de Cocina, we talked about the role of young people in not in a digital stage. We were in the auditorium in the Basque Culinary Center, you know, pandemic changes and virtual greetings. But the thing was that we young people always worry about learning, being better, and showing how good we are. I tell you because until very recently, I included myself there, and I was terrified about the image of success that I projected. I think those things lead you to jump through dozens of restaurants, as you have said many times, looking to fill out a curriculum vitae that all talk about results. I got there, I won that, or created that other. It is incredible how from your plate you have bet for 50 years on a gastronomy in which success should be rethought, and that education for the young generation should be about relating success with the value provided and not through an egotistical self-relation. So what is success for you, Alice? That's the question.
What is success for me? For people to be delighted by the food that we offer, to be so delighted that they say, where did this come from? How can I get this? That's what happened to me again in France. The first time I tasted a fraise de bois. What is this? Where do I get it? And they told me I had to go up in the woods and hunt it. And it could only be at a little moment at time. But it's cooking food without any compromise. And when I say no compromise, I mean no compromise in terms of purity. The procurement of food from people who take care of the land is number one for me. It's right there with seasonality, completely right there. But when you create a culture in a restaurant that extends the values that I have into other realms, like where the tablecloths come from. Are they made of cotton? And where does the cotton come from? Where does the glasses come from? Where does the silverware come from? What are the consequences of the decisions that we make about everything we use in the restaurant?
Yeah.
But I think, when those values go out into the room, people
Yeah.
feel it. They feel it. And they don't know exactly what's happening. But I really feel that's why they come back. It is the hospitality of the waiter who knows about the food in detail and can tell you anything you want to know, because the waiter eats like that at home.
And there's something wonderful about the family that you've created at Chez Panisse as well that has then extended across the world. I know that Juana was particularly interested in this sort of Chez Panisse as a place where people would go to learn and then move on to do other things. Didn't you have some questions about that, Juana?
Exactly. The first question was a bit about that, but now that you told me that your stuff normally is about your friends or family or people that you like to make a kind of family, I was asking you maybe how could you lead those talents during those times? I mean, you've lived a long time through the kitchen, so maybe you see any evolution about it. You know what I mean?
Not quite. You I think we have become better teachers. And we do have that internship program that brings people, for 3 months to be interns or 6 months. And they sometimes stay, and they are from around the world. And they do become part of La Famille Pennies. They're just, I can't, we have very, very close connections with people who spent a good period of time in the kitchen or the dining room. And that sharing of whatever we have, there's no holding of the knowledge or a
No.
recipe. Anybody can use anything. And I've always thought, what if somebody opened a restaurant across the street and called it Chez Panisse? And I thought, well, okay, I don't want to trademark this. I don't. If they opened a restaurant across the street and people liked it better, I'd have to really think about what we were doing. And
It's a competition.
A competition. But I'm always learning from other people that have really great ideas. And it is a thrill for me to see people that have really worked a long time at Chez Panisse and open another restaurant that is just so beautiful that I can't. I'm jealous at first. And
I suppose. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I was just. I suppose that's one of the positive elements of digitalization and modernization. I was sort of interested to sort of hear your thoughts on modernization and digitalization and globalization and all of these things that are sort of often presented as sort of the destroyers of the slow food movement. How can we make these elements work in our favor instead of against what we're trying to achieve in terms of the planet and in terms of the propagation of slow food?
Well, this little conversation that we're having today is one way.
That's true. Good point.
It's one way. That we can really know what people are thinking about around the world, for sure. Very carefully curated conversations, I think, are important right now. But we can't, unfortunately, do without this right now.
Yeah.
But it really, we have to make rules for ourselves and not bring it to the table.
Mm.
And when we're with children, we can't have it in our hand.
Yeah.
We cannot have it in our hand. I think that schools, when I went to China and I went to the embassy, they had a little, you had to put this in a little box when you walked into the embassy, and you got it when you got out. And I think that's the way we have to do it at school.
Yeah.
And I think we cannot get more computers. We need gardens. We need to teach in gardens. We need outdoor learning. And it's a moment in time to have this. There is a big forest school movement that started in Germany, and I know it's all around Europe, where they just take kids to the woods to play and cook a soup in a pot or whatever, take them to the beach. Now there are beach schools. Now, this is what we need to have happen so that we can address climate, because if climate is over there.
I think Julia had some questions about this in terms of the practicalities of trying to make this a reality, maybe on our own turf. Julia.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it was something in particular that you said, that the fast food culture, what it does is it just inhibits our pathways from the world to our mind, and we have to make kids reconnect again with their senses and and everything. My question was, how have you measured the impact, the tangible impact of creating gardens in schools? What have been the observable benefits that you've seen since all of these projects have been launched?
Huge benefits. I mean, I didn't need somebody from the University of California to come and tell us that the more that children are connected with the vegetables in the garden, that the more likely they are to eat them. I knew that that was the case, but they did measure that, and they have confirmed that the more vegetables that children see and eat, the in the garden, the more and in the classroom of cooking, the more likely they are to eat them. And I can say absolutely from our test case of 25 years of middle school, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, 1,000 of them, and they speak 22 languages in school.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a good test case.
Yes.
Teenagers, when they're there for 3 years, they are
Yes.
changed.
Excuse me, Alex. Alice,
Yes.
I want to ask you something because you have been running your restaurant for 50 years and you have had a daughter I think it was 35 years ago. How has women role in kitchens evolved, and how do you think that are the key things that we still have to go on with women role in kitchens?
Well, let me relate that to the Edible Schoolyard Project, because there we're putting boys and girls in different roles. Boys are in the kitchen cooking, girls are digging the garden outside. And I think when there is that exchange, that empathy with each other, that where boys are doing sort of what they've considered girls' jobs and vice versa, you have something very special that goes on. And I've seen it happen where they hang out together after their classes. I used to always be on the girls' side and the boys over there, always. I always tried to get over on the boys' side, but but it was separated that way, and I have never felt that I couldn't do it because I was a woman. And that came from an empowerment that I felt at the University of California during the free speech movement. I felt like we're all can do it. You can do this.
Yeah.
And they said it to men and women. You can both do this, whatever you need to do. And I do believe that, and I believe that through Montessori thinking,
Yeah.
in its empowerment of the person. And so I don't know whether I've really asked that question, but I've always wanted a balance of men and women in the restaurant. It's very important
Yeah.
that we have that balance. Sometimes it gets a little bit more one way or the other. Right now, we have 4 women in key positions. 5. But that just happened. I didn't seek that out to happen.
Yeah.
But when you're just, I think we have to make a much bigger effort, and we are doing so right now, to find people of color to work at the in the restaurant. And something I can advise you, because I never thought about it, never ever thought about this, that the people who are doing the interviewing need to be, diverse.
Yeah.
They cannot be two white people doing the interviewing, because that already pushes people a little bit away. And no one wants to be that one person.
Yeah.
And we immediately have changed that. But it has to be people in key positions.
Yeah.
We've had them in the dining room at various times, but now, and in the kitchen, many. But we have to make a real effort.
Yeah. I think in terms of education, plays such an important role, and the Edible Garden Project is such a beautiful way of teaching people on all levels, not just about vegetables, but also about, sums and science and all of these things.
Everything.
How, if somebody wanted to bring that idea to their hometown, how would you suggest, or what would your advice be to sort of, for somebody that wanted to bring that project to, I don't know, to their local area? How would you go about that?
Well, we certainly have a lot of information on our website, and it's open to anybody. There are probably 5,000 to 6,000 schools around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really great to connect up with somebody that's nearby. But I just simply wrote a letter to the principal of the school saying, because my daughter was about to go to school, I said, how could this school look so bad? and he said to me, why don't you come over and beautify it? So I went, but I understood that it's very important to have an enlightened principal. He was willing to take a risk. He said, bring in your teachers. They may not have the credentials that our teachers have, but they know how to cook and be gardeners. Bring them in. Bring in your nonprofit. We can make money. We can give you a place on campus to exist. Now, how unusual is that? But there are people really in schools that know how our schools have been industrialized like our farms. And they know that teachers have been disempowered. And they want children to be connected to food and to nature. And we as restaurateurs can really help with that, because we know the power of food. And we can even just connect them at the beginning of this project. We just bought farm boxes from a farm, and we brought them to the 6th grade classrooms. And the teacher would open the box and they would say, do you know what this is? Do you know what that is? And then they gave away everything in the box. And they took the kids out to the farm. Now we did that for 6th grade classes. And that just opened the door. But it's not rocket science, because every single kid would rather be in nature than in a classroom. So they all want to go, period, wherever it is. And you can make it such a learning place. I mean, all of our curriculum is online on how we teach math, science, history, all of it's online.
Amazing.
And there's something I want to grab, a little show and tell.
Just
I
while we're
don't
waiting.
have the beautiful color version. I can't find it right now. But this was like a placemat that we used for lunch, and had a map of what we got in the Columbian exchange, which they were studying in a history class. And so this would be the placemat, and then they would eat the food that was brought to Mexico, and we'd have a
Amazing.
tortilla soup, and it's that engages the kids in a way that they will always remember. They'll always remember that those black-eyed peas were sewn into the clothes of the slaves who
Wow.
came over to the United States from Africa.
It's
And
amazing, isn't
then
it?
they planted those seeds in the South. And that has became the nourishment for the whole culture.
I've
And
just we don't have very long left,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
just I'm so sorry, but I just wanted to see whether Juana or Julia or Carlos, you had any final questions.
So mine is not actually a question, but it's just to add on with what you've said. I do believe food is such a powerful tool, not just to teach history and to teach about sustainability or health, but actually what we're doing here at Harvard right now is we're using food to teach science, and it's even like the kids' long-term retention, their motivation, their understanding of the topics through food is just incredible, and just engages them to a whole different level. And I just think it's a very powerful tool. I agree.
Well, I have to give you my last big idea, and this is that the universities around the world need to commit themselves to 100% regenerative organic food, and that in doing so, we can reach that carbon neutrality that we need to reach around climate right away. Now, the University of California is where I'm working right now because they're right there. And they already have a carbon neutrality for 2025. And they are
Wow.
thinking of including food in that neutrality. And
we need to get out there and spread the
I'm
word
pushing them all the way. But if they did this, they would make a path for kindergarten through high school, because they have the research capabilities. They have all the knowledge around health. They have, the buying power.
Yeah.
But there's two key words. The buying power is incredibly important to have the predictable how am I saying, mixing this up here, but the university using its buying power to absolutely support the farmers and the ranchers. They will buy everything from them.
Completely.
And that's what puts people in business. Can you imagine how many tortillerias we're going to have to make, to support the University of California with organic tortillas? How many? I mean, it's just incredible that, and we can make food that fits into that price range. We think we can't, but we can.
Yeah.
And it needs to be really talked about at all the culinary schools. How can we make something irresistible and affordable?
Yeah.
And
I
it's
think No, I was just saying that I think that's a lovely point to end on. Actually, is yeah, where things need to begin to change is in education. Absolutely.
Well, I'm using the 50th birthday, my manifesto, to just push this idea for the University of California in the biggest way. And if we have a meal at the Greek Theater, on the stage of the Greek Theater, you're all invited. You're all invited.
We'll be there.
28th of August this year.
28th of August. It's in the diary.
Tuned. Stay tuned.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Honestly, this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation. It's been wonderful to hear your thoughts.
Well,
really
I'm going to come to Spain and see you all. Really,
Please do. You're absolutely welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.